Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
Welcome to Springfield, Missouri, Springfield-Greene County, the Library Center.
Well, it's great to be there.
We're very excited to talk with you. We're kicking off our Open Space Week this week and having all kinds of activities, and we were very glad you could join us today. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Okay, that's great. Well, welcome everybody. It's great to be there in spirit, not in person. So I actually grew up in the local area there, not too far up the road at Lake of the Ozarks. So I went to school at School of the Osage, so right near the Bagnell Dam. So I'm a local guy. I grew up on a farm out near Brumley. And so spent all through high school on the farm, and then went off to college, went to University of Illinois, and there I studied aerospace engineering, was part of the Air Force ROTC program, also had the opportunity to play football while I was there. So a wonderful experience at the University of Illinois, graduated, was commissioned into the United States Air Force, and also went off to Stanford to do a master's. And from there I I've been all over the place in the Air Force. Along the way, I got married, had 2 sons, and so have had a wonderful career in the Air Force, really enjoyed it. Over the course of 13 years, 4 tries to be an astronaut. I was applying since 1996, didn't get selected until 2009. So it took a little while, but I eventually got selected. So we came here, moved to Houston in 2009. Went through a couple years of really what was initial space astronaut training. And then at that point, I was very fortunate, got assigned to a mission right away, and so launched to the International Space Station last September. So I guess about a year ago or so, I was launched into space. Spent 6 months, almost 6 months, 166 days up at the International Space Station. And this last March, landed, so a little over 6 months I've been back on Earth. And so that's where I am today. And so it's great to talk with you. I look forward to all your questions and everything. Hopefully I'll be able to answer them all. So I guess we can get started with that.
Okay, you said you were trying out applying to be an astronaut since '96. When did you know you wanted to be an astronaut?
So that's interesting. Back in high school was really when I started dreaming about or thinking about being an astronaut. Back then, this was way back then in the late 80s, mid 80s really. At that time was early in the shuttle program. And so they used to actually, when there was going to be a shuttle launch, we actually got to go into the gym or something, and they would actually play the shuttle launch live for us, so we got to watch it live. So that really piqued my interest, seeing the astronauts on board the shuttle, doing their EVAs, launching satellites, doing the science up on board on the shuttle. So it got me interested in it, and at the same time, I was also very interested in avionics, flying, space. So that's why University of Illinois was a great fit for me from an education standpoint, and the Air Force worked very well as well. So I actually, in the Air Force, I got to do flight tests. I was a flight test engineer, and that means I wasn't a pilot, but I got to help test airplanes. I got to fly on those airplanes, sitting oftentimes in the back seat behind the pilot, and so I got to do a lot of flying as well.
Wow. How did your family react when they found out you were going to the space station? Were they pretty excited, or were they more nervous than excited?
Well, I think if you asked my mother, she would say that I don't know if excited would be the right word. She was certainly, I think, pretty nervous about it. My wife and kids were very excited. Julie, that's my wife. She's known really since we met, and that was back when we were at the University of Illinois together. She's known that this was something I wanted to do, and so she's been a big part of that process, I guess, throughout my career in the Air Force as well as the kids. And so I think in many sense when she heard that I was selected first to be an astronaut, and then when I got selected to actually go up into space, it was a sense of accomplishment for her as well. So she's as big a part of this as I am.
Very, very exciting. What was the best part of it? Was it the science on the space station, or what did you love?
Everything.
Everything.
Everything. You know, so there's a lot of it that you enjoy. The science, certainly, that's incredible to get to be part of. And science, a wide range of research that's going on. That's a lot of fun. And there's also physical type sciences that you get to do. And those are experiments that are not only looking to expand human exploration into space, but also looking to benefit people down here on Earth. So there's a sense of accomplishment when you get to participate in that science activity. I got to tell you, from just this is really cool to be here standpoint, the floating is something that never got old. It's really hard here in 1G down on Earth to imagine what it's like to be able to float around. I mean, just picture in that room that you guys are sitting in right now, that if you just pushed off with your hands, you could float right up to the ceiling and flip upside down, and it wouldn't matter. So, you know, that's an experience that in 166 days that I was up there never got old. Looking down at the Earth from 260 miles up never got old. So there's a lot of things up there that really an incredible experience.
Would you go back if you were asked to?
I certainly would go back, yes. But, you know, right now there are over 50 astronauts, U.S. astronauts, and at the moment we're only launching about really 4 a year. And in some cases next year it's going to be even fewer, because we're going to send, right now we go up for about 6 months at a time. Next year we're going to send an astronaut up for a full year. So that's actually going to take away one of those slots. So there's not a lot of slots every year. As I said, there's over 50 of us. And so as the guy that just landed, you can imagine where I stand on the list. You know, I'm not quite sure. My oldest is interested in aviation. He's thinking about the Air Force. So I think maybe he would be interested in it. My younger one, I don't think he's not really interested in the flying side of things and all of that. So they still got a long way to go. They're 16 and 13, so we'll see.
Yeah, got a lot of time.
That's right.
Did it take you a long time to adjust back to gravity? You said you love weightlessness. Was it really a challenge since you were gone for so long?
Yeah, so the transitions are both going and coming. So when I set up in and I experienced gravity, and I actually, like I was technically that I was doing, I was on the Earth, but that sensation. Just sure if you guys were all sitting in your chairs upside down on the ceiling and you were all to let go, that feeling of falling, that's how I felt. And that lasted for really 18 to 24 hours for me. So that transition is strange, even when you're going into the microgravity environment. Coming home, same problems. You know, there's that, you've been up in space now for 6 months, so you're used to that microgravity environment. When you first get down on Earth, things are heavy. Just lifting up my head was heavy. Lifting a book up out of the capsule after we had landed, handing that out to the search and rescue guys was extremely heavy. Your neurovestibular system is messed up a little bit. So for me, there's an instability when you're trying to walk and all of that. And so those things take time to get used to after you get back. It's a gradual process, but I would say within a week you're feeling really good, and within a couple weeks most of the effects of microgravity are gone, and certainly by the end of a month you're feeling pretty normal.
That's much quicker than I anticipated it would be. Are most astronauts spending as much time as you did on the space station? Is that the standard amount of time that people are staying up?
It sure is, yeah. So the way the assignments on the International Space Station, at any one time, there's typically 6 astronauts and cosmonauts on board. And so typically 3 of those are from Russia, so they're cosmonauts. And then on The other side, the other three, you've got usually 2 U.S. astronauts and then 1 astronaut from either Europe, from Japan, or from Canada. And so we go up and down in threes. And at any one time, there's a few weeks out of the year where we only have 3 people up there. So what typically happens is 3 will come home, and there'll be like a 2-week period where you only have the 3 on board, and then 3 new astronauts will come up.
I have a couple of questions coming in here from people here in the audience.
You bet.
How long does it take to get from Earth to the International Space Station?
Well, so when you launch, actually, tell you what we will do. I think if we can, I'll show you a launch. Can we show the launch video, Dana? Are you able to pull that up? I'll kind of keep talking here and see if maybe we can pull up a video from the launch. We'll test that out. If not, that's okay too. But once you launch, it only takes 9 minutes really to get up into orbit. And then at that point, we take another 4 orbits, which is really 6 hours, to go through a series of burns that allow us to intercept or rendezvous with the International Space Station. But we're going to get to show you some video from my launch. So I'll kind of slide out of the way a little bit here. Am I not in the way? I can't see myself, so I think I'm okay here.
You're good.
Okay, great. So what you're seeing is when we went through our final exam. So that's myself, Oleg Kotov, and Sergei Ryazansky, and we are getting ready at this point to go through for our final exam. So this is at the end of 2.5 years of training. We're going to crawl inside that simulator, and we are going to launch to the International Space Station. Now that's the rocket that we launch up on, and that's a Soyuz rocket, and this is actually down in Baikonur in Kazakhstan. So really on the other side of the world is where this is taking place. And so that's a pretty exciting time. This is the day of launch. We've just suited up at this point. Right now it's about, I would say it's probably midnight over in Kazakhstan, and we're going to launch at about 3 in the morning. So we're getting ready to get onto a bus that's going to take us out to the launch pad, and from the launch pad we'll then, there we are actually at the launch pad. This is kind of our last moment. We're going to wave to everybody, say goodbye, and then we're going to go up an elevator. The 3 of us plus 1 technician are going to squeeze into this little elevator, and we're going to ride all the way to the top and crawl into the rocket, or into the capsule, not into the rocket itself. So actually, can we turn up the volume here of the video? Is that not going to come through at all? No, it's not coming through. Okay, so right now is what you kind of hear when you think of launches. There's that 10, 9, 8, 7. So that countdown is happening, and that is an amazing moment for you. So at this point, this is at the end of a 2.5 year process. So pretty exciting. We're finally launched. For me at this point was really kind of a sense of relief, if you will, because during that whole 2.5 year period, you're kind of nervous. You're nervous that you're going to get sick, or maybe you're going to get injured, or maybe they're just going to replace you because they're not happy with how things are going. And so it's kind of a sense of relief that, okay, when the rocket lights, they can't replace me at this point. It'd be a little hard. So you can actually see inside the vehicle itself during that launch process. It is a pretty tight fit, and here we're going through the rendezvous. So that is the Soyuz up in space, and it's during that 4 orbits that I talked about where we're rendezvousing with the International Space Station. And the rendezvous itself is automatic. Though if at any one point something wasn't going wrong or wasn't going right, the commander could take control and actually do a manual docking. And so here you can actually see as we're approaching the station. So that's the vehicle that's moving from the left there into it. That is a Soyuz. There you can kind of see the target that we're driving into to make sure we dock, and there's docking. So all of that process from when the rocket lit to this point in time is 6 hours. So we can actually stop the video at this point, and so that at the end of that 6 hours, the work's not done. We now have a couple hours where we have to go through and equalize the pressure between the 2 vehicles before we even open the hatches. So it takes about 8 hours really before we get inside the International Space Station.
6 hours. Fast. Thank goodness, huh?
That's right.
From your experiences, did you develop a greater sense that the Earth is fragile and we need to protect it more?
Probably the sense I would say that I got was that really the Earth, the whole Earth, is truly an incredible place. And there's parts of the Earth that I got to see for the first time that I never would have viewed in the way I did when you get to see them for 260 miles up. Things like the desert. So I don't know if we can show, I've got some pictures that I actually took while I was up on board the International Space Station of the desert. And, when you think about the deserts, or at least before I launched, when thinking about the deserts, I didn't really think of them as anything to be very exciting about. But there's some dunes. The way the wind would form these sand dunes is pretty incredible. And so, there's just parts of the Earth that, again, I didn't have an appreciation for, that I certainly had much more of an appreciation for after seeing it from that altitude. Are we going to be able to pull those up? Okay, I'm getting a shake head, so I'll kind of keep talking here. So, in terms of is the Earth fragile? Yeah, the part that makes you think of that a little bit more is when you see the atmosphere and how thin it really is, because of course we're up above it, but you can see it on the horizon a little bit, and it is thin relative to the distances, and relative to honestly the expanse of outer space. So pretty incredible there. So I tell you what, we'll just go on to the next question, and if we're able to pull that up, I'll come back to it.
So you were talking about seeing the deserts. Did you see Missouri from space?
I did see Missouri. I was able to take some photos of the school the Osage, so really the whole Lake of the Ozark area, and probably got Springfield in there as well. I got the farm that I grew up on, was able to get some pictures of that. So, it's interesting though, we are really moving fast up there. We're going 17,500 miles an hour. So it doesn't take us long to go across the whole United States, 5, 6, 7 minutes, and we've gone from the West Coast to the East Coast. So when you think about trying to take a picture of Springfield, you have to really know where you're looking to be able to get that picture. Because if you're not looking at the right spot, just like that, you're going to go beyond it. So I was lucky. A lot of times, what you end up doing when you're coming over, you'll have a predicted time that you're going to. It's over something you're interested in, and so what you'll end up a lot of the times doing is just kind of point in the right direction and just start snap, and then in post storage, you'll look at the pictures and you'll see, hey, did I get it? And that's where I was able to capture those shots.
Speaking of other things you might have seen while you were up there. Did he see Mars and all the other planets?
So you don't see all the other planets. We are able to see Mars, Venus as they're coming up. The moon is very distinct. But if you think about it, most of the windows that we have on board the International Space Station are actually looking down at the Earth. So we do have, you can't see stars, you can't see space, but really the Earth dominates our view.
I'll see if I can get this one right. During your mission, did you have to do any collision avoidance maneuvers? This person used to work for the Orbital Degree Program Office.
Oh, fantastic, yeah. So we did not have to do it, and we actually call them a DAM, a debris avoidance maneuver. And so while I was up there, we did not have to perform any of those, but it's not uncommon. I would say in any given year, you're probably going to have 2, 3, or 4 of those maneuvers that are required to avoid some of the space junk that's up there, and there is quite a bit of it. In fact, the Air Force actually tracks a lot of that debris, or most of that debris, and when they have predictors on those on their orbits, and when any of those are getting close to the space station, they'll let NASA know, and then NASA will also take a look at it and start doing their predictions. And if it's going to get close enough, that's when they'll decide that we may need to do a maneuver. Now, on the other hand, sometimes that information doesn't come in time. The predictions may not be accurate enough, so that they don't realize it's going to get close until it's too late. Because it actually takes a little bit of time in order to move the station. It's not something like a car or anything you can just turn the wheel and it moves out of the way. So if we don't do that maneuver in time, then what we'll actually do is we'll all go into our Soyuz, that's the vehicle we rode up on, we'll crawl in that and be ready in the event that if something should strike the station, you can get away very quickly.
That would be very exciting. You'd be filming your own gravity.
It'd be bad if we had to abandon the space station.
That was, yes. Did you see any asteroids while you were up there?
I did not. No, I did get to see meteors coming down into the atmosphere or anything like that. Those are pretty, you have to be pretty lucky to capture or to be there looking out when one of those comes in.
What is it like eating food in space?
I'm glad you asked that. So food. Yeah, so we actually have a pretty big menu up on station. Basically, we have what we'll call a 9-day menu, and so it kind of repeats itself every 9 days. We have a wide variety of food. The food is packaged. Oh yeah, let me get out of the way. There you can see me actually eating some food. So you notice the food floats a little bit there. So that spoon as well. That's what we use to eat just about everything up on board the station. So don't lose your spoon. It's very important. But you can see the food just kind of sticks and goes there. Just bring it into your mouth. But the types of food comes in different packages. So like this, for example, I'll move this up a little bit. This is actually the dehydrated asparagus. What's yummy? Yeah, everybody likes asparagus, right? Well, imagine eating it like this. Actually, it's not too bad. So what we'll do, there's a label here, and so what ends up happening is this label tells me it's asparagus. It needs 50 milliliters of hot water, and so we have what we call a potable water dispenser that a needle will go in here into this valve, and we can put in the right amount of water. So you put the water in it, you let it sit there for about 10 minutes or so, and then you use scissors, you open that up, and then that spoon that I was talking about, you scoop out the food. So dehydrated foods, a lot of it, like here we go. What else do we have here? There's always some interesting one. Oh yeah. How about broccoli au gratin? There you go. That's good. Broccoli au gratin is pretty good. Now, some other food that we get comes in these little packets. And these packets really, they don't require any water, but what they do require is they need to be heated up a lot of times. And so this one is sweet and sour pork. So this might be your main course. And so we have a little oven up on board that we'll stick this in. It's actually like a little suitcase that has a hot plate in it. And you'll put it in there for maybe 15 minutes or so. And again, once you get it out, you take your scissors, you snip it off. And this is why, if you notice that spoon that was in that other picture was kind of long, because if you think about it, if you had just a short spoon, you'd be getting it all over your hands and everything as you're trying to get it out of this. So that's another type of food. Let's see, so to drink. So we can't just use a cup on board the International Space Station because the water wouldn't stay in the cup. It'd just float out and be everywhere. So what we end up doing is we call these drink bags. They're kind of a silver bag, and again, that same water dispenser that I talked about, you'll put the water in. This straw wouldn't be on there, so you put the water in, and it's most of the time it's like 250 milliliters. So this is actually coffee. So those of you that really love your hot cup of Joe in the morning, imagine drinking it out of a straw. So it's a little bit different. So you put the straw once the water's into it, and then all you do is you release the clasp there, you drink from it, and then when you're done, you need to close it up, because if you didn't close it off, what's going to end up happening is the water's going to keep coming out and it's going to get everywhere. Let's see, what else? Some of the other food that we have on board, I don't really have any of those examples, but there's every kind of common day food that you have down on Earth. So we'll have granola bars. I liked some of the dry salamis, so I had some of those up on board. And occasionally we get, when a supply vehicle comes up, there'll be a little care package on board that'll have some fresh food. And that was one of the things that I certainly missed while I was up there, the fresh fruit, the fresh vegetables. We got fresh tortillas one time. Oh, they were great. So when you get the fresh food up there, it's certainly a treat.
So you get to choose your meals.
You know, we get to choose in the sense that, you know, like that sweet and sour pork, for example, that's going to show up on the menu every 9 days. So somewhere in that 9 days, I probably need to eat sweet and sour pork. It's just I get to choose, you know, which day I eat that. But typically what we try and do is the food kind of comes packaged such that it will last 9 days, and so you want to try and eat as much of that food as you can before you open up a new package.
Not a lot of pizza delivery there.
No, not a lot of pizza delivery there.
Do you eat space ice cream?
So the space, like we don't have any of the dehydrated ice cream that you may have seen in some of the gift shops. But what we did have, actually, I was on board with an Italian astronaut, and they came up with a gelato that you could store outside of the freezer. And then when you wanted it, we do have a small little freezer up there. We were able to stick it into the freezer for a few hours, and we could have some gelato, which that was a rare treat.
That's really nice. Coffee and gelato. Oh, sign me up. That sounds good. Let's see here. Can you describe when and how, or the process that started your formal education and training? When you were
for the astronaut, once I was selected as an astronaut? Okay. Yeah, you bet. So, as I mentioned, I was selected in the summer of 2009. I think July 21st or 22nd is when the announcement actually, or when I actually got the phone call. The selection process, when I had to have the application in, actually started about a year and a half before that. So it's quite a long process before they finally decide who they're going to invite down to become astronauts. That initial training really covers a lot of different areas. One of the areas that you're going to learn is the spacesuits themselves. So we're going to learn how to do spacewalk. And the other thing is we're going to do how to operate the robotic arm. The space station has this big robotic arm up there that we use to capture vehicles to help us out when we are doing the spacewalks. And so we need to learn how to use that. On board the space station itself, there's all kinds of systems. There's the life support systems, there's the power systems, there's the computer systems. We learn those, so we'll go through that training. We also learn the T-38, which is a trainer jet that we use, and that kind of gives us some real life operational training because you're flying together as a team, 2 people in the airplane, which is very useful for us as well. One of the other things that we have to do is learn how to speak Russian because right now we don't have a U.S. launch vehicle for humans, and which means that we rely on the Russian Soyuz, which is what I launched on. But as you can imagine, that vehicle and all of its displays and the ground crew when they're talking to you, that is all in Russian. So we had to learn another language as well, which I would say was probably the most difficult part of the training for me, was actually learning another language.
Wow. Did you have to go to the language school like you did before?
For Italian? No. In fact, here at Johnson Space Center, we actually have Russian instructors, and so we're able to do that training. So when I mentioned all of the different things that we were learning how to do during that initial training, oftentimes that's all mixed together. So on Monday, I might be out in the spacesuit doing some training, and then on Tuesday, I have a class on the ISS systems as well as a class with the robotic arm, and then maybe Wednesday is when I have a Russian class, and so it's all mixed together.
When I was in Houston, we visited and saw kind of a behind the scenes the astronauts training in that gigantic deep pool.
Right. Yeah, that's called the Neutral Fluency Lab, and that's where we practice those spacewalks. So in the water is as close as we can get to what it's like to be in microgravity. So we actually will put on the spacesuits that we use for the spacewalks, and inside that pool, as you saw, there is a mock-up of the International Space Station, particularly the outside of the International Space Station, which is where, of course, when we're on a spacewalk is where we're working. And so what will happen is we'll actually train for those spacewalks in that pool, but it requires a lot of safety precautions. For example, we'll have each astronaut in his suit is going to have 3 divers that are dedicated to him. They're there to help because even though we are in the pool, you still have gravity, and so it's very hard to make everything neutrally buoyant and float right there with you. And so some things can still want to fall down into the bottom of the pool, which of course they wouldn't do up in space. The other thing that happens is they're there as safety. So if anything should go wrong, these divers are going to get us up out of the water as quickly as possible. So a very critical role that the divers play for us while we're out at the neutral buoyancy level.
Well, they were talking about the training, the amount of training it took to become just one of the divers. And they said how many hours you had to spend working on a task so that you could learn to repeat it. It was so many hours per.
Yeah, and I don't know the specific hours, and some of that has changed a little bit because back when we still had the space shuttle, a lot of the spacewalks that were done were part of constructing the International Space Station. And so those were some very specific tasks that they knew when they launched on the shuttle that they were going to go out the door and perform. Basically, construction of the station is over, and that's part of the reason why the space shuttle was retired. So when we go out on spacewalks today, more often than not, it's more of a contingency activity. So for example, last December, we had a problem with the cooling system on the outside of the space station, which meant that Rick and I had to go out and do a couple of spacewalks. That wasn't planned. So a lot of our training now, there I am, that's actually me on that one of those spacewalks. In fact, that's on Christmas Eve last year when I was outside the space station on a spacewalk. So as you can imagine, that's a pretty amazing view. But anyway, so a lot of times now they're not planned, and so you don't have as much opportunity to do a certain number of hours of training for that particular task.
Did you see the Christmas lights from up there?
I didn't see the Christmas lights, I didn't see Santa, but we were sure looking.
Oh man, that would have been awesome.
All right.
How did you talk to your family while in space?
That is a great question as well. I don't know if we can pull up. I have a video that shows our family conferences, so I may try and pull that up. Let's see if we can do that, and I'll talk through it. Excellent. I'll be able to turn up the volume on that as well a little bit. Okay. So that is me on board the International Space Station. And what happens is that's actually Houston, viewed from the station, and that's actually my house. That's not viewed from the station. That's actually a little UAV, but there's my family. And while I'm on board, of course, my wife there is, she's got it all. She's taking care of everybody. But once a week, I got to do a video conference with them. And in fact, NASA issued them an iPad. And on that iPad was the net meeting software. And here I am on board the International Space Station. Now, my two sons actually play hockey. And so it worked out the timing that they were actually playing hockey games when we had these video conferences. So I got to watch about 4 or 5 of their hockey games live. And so you can see me on that iPad right there, and there again on station as I'm watching the hockey game live. Julie's standing there with that iPad and showing me, if you feel like you're right there. And so it was very important for me from a morale standpoint to get to be able to participate in that. I think from my kids' standpoint, knowing that I was watching, even though I was orbiting around the Earth, that was a pretty neat experience for them as well. The other thing that we had from a statement, so we can stop that now.
It's the end of January.
Yeah. So we'll shut this off now, but the other thing we have up there is what we call an IP phone. And so through the computer and through the comm system on board the International Space Station, we're able to actually get patched into a phone down here on the ground, and then we can pretty much call anybody. So I actually, while I was up there, probably talked to my wife every day. And so the communication capability is very good.
So that probably makes things much, much better.
It does. It absolutely does.
Stay in touch with your family. How does the oxygen filtration work on the
So Right, so we do have a life support system on board, and basically it's scrubbing the air. So there's constant movement of the air. We have basically an air conditioner on board as well. And so we're scrubbing out the CO2 because, as we breathe, we're generating carbon dioxide. So we have to scrub that out, and then we also are generating oxygen by some of that water that we have on board. We take that, and through electrolysis, we'll turn it into oxygen. So that's kind of how we continually resupply the atmosphere and clean the atmosphere on board the International Space Station. And there's filters everywhere as well that are collecting any particles in the air.
When you landed, someone wants to know where you landed when you came down from the space station.
Right, so when you land, there I am. That's right after I landed. So we actually land in Kazakhstan as well. So Baikonur is the launch facility in Kazakhstan, and then we actually land just kind of out in the middle of the plains there of Kazakhstan, the steppes. And the landing is quite interesting. When you land, the capsule we're in, it's under a parachute. But when you first enter the atmosphere, it's kind of interesting because you look out the window. You have small windows on either side, and you can look out the window and you'll see these orange, the orange plasma going by and sparks and everything. So it's actually, you see the spacecraft kind of burning up as it enters the atmosphere. And then what's interesting is when the chute actually opens and kind of catches the vehicle, there's a very big bang as it comes in. Actually, we've got some video playing now of this is the day I returned. So that was my little crew quarter, and I'm leaving that now and floating over to where our Soyuz is docked. So you'll actually see me get inside that. So that's where the Soyuz, that's the vehicle I launched on, and this is us as we're getting ready to go into that as well. So the undocking and landing all happens pretty quick as well. About 3 hours or so from the time you undock to when you're down on Earth, 3.5 hours. So there we're closing the hatch. And again, those are the two Russian crewmates that I launched with. So there we're backing away from the International Space Station, and in this video you'll actually see our vehicle floating down there below the International Space Station as we get ready for that deorbit burn. So what will happen is we'll actually fire the rockets that's going to deorbit us. And then we enter the atmosphere. And you can see some scenes here, I think, coming up of that entering the atmosphere. Remember when I talked about, there you go. So that's that kind of orange glow, that plasma that's going by. So that's basically our space vehicle is burning up as it's entering the atmosphere. So as you can imagine, that's a pretty exciting time. We landed in Kazakhstan. This was in March. There was about 1.5 feet of snow on the ground, quite a bit of cloud cover as well. And you've got search and rescue crew there, though, that are helping out. There's the commander, Oleg Kotov, and there's me as well. So they haul you out, and you have a chance. It's quite a process to get out of the vehicle because it is pretty small. But overall, I felt really good. I had those issues that I talked about. Actually, you see me there on a satellite phone. I had a chance to talk to Julie and the boys right after I landed. And this is coming off the helicopter that brought us back to the airport. Shortly after this, I'll actually get onto an airplane, and within 24 hours of touching down in Kazakhstan on the other side of the world, I was back in Houston and with my family. So pretty exciting time. Thank you. Hi.
We're back.
I'm back.
They want to know, are space suits comfortable?
Ooh. It's not as comfortable as this flight suit, I'll say that. On the other hand, the space suits form a pretty critical role. They're what keeps you alive. We had two different spacesuits that we wore. The one that we launched in, that you saw me in when we were in the Soyuz, that's a Sokol suit. And basically that's like a pressure suit that in the event something were to go wrong on the Soyuz and we would lose pressure inside of it, that suit would be able to maintain enough pressure around us to keep us alive. And so that's a little bit different story than the suit that you see behind me. Let me get out of the way. There you go. So that suit is what we use when we go out on a spacewalk, and it's got that backpack that you see. Well, let's see. Are you seeing me? I'm not sure. No, I just went away. But there's a backpack there. That's got all of our oxygen. It's got power, and it's got cooling in it. So that's what's keeping us alive as we're outside. Is it completely comfortable? No, but that's okay. It's definitely worth having the opportunity to go outside the International Space Station on a spacewalk.
And they said, is it scary floating outside in space?
It is, yeah. You know, when you first look outside the hatch and you're looking down at the Earth, there's a lot of different emotions that are going through your head at that point in time. You're very excited, you're very motivated because this is something you've trained a long time for, and it's something that really most astronauts hope they get the opportunity to do. So you're very motivated. At the same time, you do have a sense of, I'll describe it as vulnerability. You are going out into the vacuum of space, and there's a lot of things that could go wrong that make it a very dangerous thing to do. And so you're aware of that. On the other hand, you've trained it in that pool that you said, and so really the training starts to kick in, and you really just start to do the job that you have to do. If you want, I think we have a video of some of my EVA. Are we doing okay on time and number of questions that you have?
Yeah, we're doing good.
Okay, excellent. Well, let's take a look at, I mentioned that I had to go out on a couple of spacewalks in December last year, and so this is a video of that. And so you're actually seeing us as we come out the hatch. This is in the airlock, and that's actually Rick, the guy I was on with. He's coming out. Now, what's interesting about that, you see Julie and Candy, that's our wives. They are at mission control here in Houston, watching this live, and so that's a little bit something unique, because again, this is a very dangerous activity, and if something goes wrong, they're going to see it actually live. So there's Rick and I as we're getting ready to grab this replacement pump module, which is what we had to change out, and it's about the size of a refrigerator and weighs about 800 pounds if it was down here on Earth. Of course, up there it doesn't weigh anything, but it's got quite a bit of mass. So you can see I'm on the bottom of that arm. You're going to see it move here. That's me holding on to that pump module as we're moving it into position to replace it. So that was quite a ride. Very exciting to do. So we were outside we had to do 2 EVAs. The first EVA we were outside for about 5.5 hours. And the second EVA that we did, the spacewalk, we were outside for about, 7.5 hours. So they're long days because that's just the time we're actually outside. It actually takes us about 4.5 hours just to get into the suit and get ready to go, depressurize the airlock, all of those kind of things to get out the door. It's a very long day when we're doing a spacewalk, but it's a very rewarding day. There you see Koichi Wakata. He's inside the space station during this, and he's the one, when you saw me on that robotic arm that was moving me around, he was the one that was actually controlling that robotic arm. So a very important job that he was doing as well. And I think here at the end, you're going to get to see again that picture of me with the Earth in the background. So people have told me that I photobombed the Earth in this case. All right, pause that now. Excellent.
How big is the space station?
So the space station itself, you can kind of see it over my shoulder there. The area that it takes up is about the size of a football field. But the area that we live in is smaller than that, it's much smaller than that. We live in these, what we call modules, and the modules are actually, here, I'll get out of your way a little bit. So you can kind of see all of these, all right, that's an individual module, and then this is a different module. And those modules were built to fit inside the space shuttle. They are what came, this was one of the main purposes of the space shuttle, was to help build this space station. So that module fit in the back of the space shuttle, and then they all got connected together. And now with all of those connected together, we have about the volume of an inside of a 747, or you might hear people say about a 5-bedroom house or something like that. But of course, keep in mind, it's a very different type of volume. in several ways. One is it's these long tubes, right? So it's not any kind of a big open room or anything like that. And two, on the advantage side is we get to take advantage of the whole volume though. So we can, there's no up and down, so we can float anywhere in there. And so we actually utilize, in a room, we actually utilize all four sides. The deck, the sides, and even the ceiling. We've got equipment, we've got experiments all over the place.
What did you do for fun on the space station?
Well, it's always fun on the International Space Station, but our days are pretty long when we're up there. We usually got started about 7:30 in the morning, where we would have a conference with the ground teams, and then really until about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, we've got scheduled activities, whether that's maintenance, whether it's doing science, exercise. And so it's a pretty long day. Then, 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, you're done, you have dinner, and then usually at that point you're running into your crew quarters and trying to catch up on emails, call the family, those kind of things. I like to read, and so I usually, before I went to bed each night, would read a little bit. On the weekends, we have a little more free time, and so you do things like, take a lot of pictures of the Earth. Sometimes during this time of year, which is when I was up there, of course, you've got football season on, so sometimes we get the games on board live, and then occasionally we have some taped games come up, so I like to watch some football. Occasionally you watch a movie. But then, doing a lot of the same things that you do on Earth, like at night, we tended to have dinner together, and so you just kind of sit around, picture hanging out in the kitchen, right, with your friends and just talking, and that's a lot of times what we did as well.
Tell us some of your favorite books.
Oh boy, some of my favorite books. So I read the Horatio Hornblower series while I was up there. Which was quite enjoyable. I kind of read books that cross the gamut. I like Garfield. I just recently read a book on Garfield, which I'd never read anything on him before, and quite a very, very interesting book. So I'll go from the nonfiction all the way to the science fiction. Really across the board, I like to read.
Excellent. How did you take a shower in space?
Great question. Didn't. Easy answer. So we do not have a shower on board the space station. Again, that's in part because the water behaves differently up there. It's not, when you stand under the shower now and that water falling down, that's all due to gravity being in this 1G environment. And of course, it's not going to act that way. If you have a shower head up there with all the water coming out, it's just going to go everywhere, and it's not going to go where you want it to go. So what we end up doing is really we just take sponge baths. So we'll get a towel or a washcloth and get it damp, and it's got a little bit of soap on it, and you wipe off that way. And then we actually have shampoo up there that's called a no-rinse shampoo. So you basically get your hair a little bit wet. So when you squeeze the water out, it'll come out kind of a ball. So you get a ball on your hand, and it's not going to go anywhere. So you can sit here with a ball of water on your hand and kind of go like that, and it's going to stay. It's not going to fall off. Then you just plop it on your head, get your hair wet, take some of this no-rinse shampoo, do the normal, wash your hair, and then you just grab a towel and dry it off, and you're done.
All little boys were taking notes here about that.
Yes. It's a hot shower.
Yes. To all the kids that are here today, and they want to train to become an astronaut and go to school, what do they need to be doing now?
They need to, STEM is very important. That's, science, technology, engineering, math. They need to probably go into some field like that, though that's not certainly required. Astronauts come from all walks of life. We've got doctors, we've got scientists, we've got pilots, we've got engineers. But what's probably the most important thing is to find something you are passionate about, that you love to do, and do it well, work hard at it. But if you love to do it, that's going to show And then when you start applying to be an astronaut, that's going to help you out. And the other important thing, just like in my case, and that's to never give up. Again, it took me 13 years, 4 applications before I was selected. So don't get discouraged. There's a lot of reasons that you may not get picked right away or picked at all, but you know, just keep trying, and you never know. What I'm really hopeful for, though, is that someone sitting in that room right now is going to be sitting where I am in about 30 years or so, and we're going to be talking to them about what it was like to have walked on Mars. Yeah.
What are you guys doing another music video?
Another music video. Well, yeah, so that was Chris Hatfield. I think that's probably the one you're referring to that he did while he was up there. I'm not much of a musician, so I don't plan on doing any videos anytime soon.
No countering his efforts, huh?
No. I'll leave it to the experts.
I know we see pictures of the volcanic activity and all kinds of those taken from space. Can you see the hurricanes and other weather events that are happening around?
You can, actually. It's pretty amazing what you can see from up there. And really, one of the things that's hard is you got to keep it in perspective. You know, you'll see a hurricane from up in space, and it's amazing because you can see the whole hurricane and the spiral of clouds, and in some sense it's beautiful. But then you got to remember, hey, there's a lot of people and a lot of harm and damage that's occurring down on Earth. Actually, if we can, I think I had some pictures of some clouds. I don't know if we can pull some of those up, but it can give you a sense of what it's like to look down on the clouds. If we're able to pull them up or not. If not, we'll continue on. Let's see. We're trying a couple things here. Sorry, I'm watching us. Miss Dana here is working her magic. She's the one that's pulling up all these videos and everything. So, you know, it actually brings up, I'll kind of highlight that. So, you know, these videos and all of that you're getting to see, that's, I'm not doing anything magic here. I'm not doing anything at all, actually. I've got Dana sitting here behind the camera making a lot of this happen. So I say that because actually when you're up on board the International Space Station, there's a huge team of people here on Earth that are helping take care of you, helping to take care of the space station. And so I think that's always important. You know, a lot of times we as the astronauts end up in front of the camera, but there's a ton of people that are behind it. And it looks like we're not going to get the pictures up, so I'm going to go on to the next question.
You mentioned a few minutes ago about Mars. What would it take to be able to land on Mars or get a person to Mars?
Yeah, so it's a big effort. It's the ultimate goal of the United States and NASA right now is to eventually go on to Mars. There you can actually see some shots. I'm not quite sure which of the rovers those came from up on Mars. There's a lot of technical challenges. A lot of those challenges are associated with how the human body reacts while it's up in microgravity. Of course, you've got to think about, you know, you have the muscle atrophy, the bones get weaker, so how do we counteract that? That's a lot of the science that we're doing on board the International Space Station. The increased exposure to radiation when you're in that transit from Earth to Mars is a big deal. And then in the technology itself, when we get there, you know, we're working on launch vehicles, new rockets that can launch enough mass that's going to require for us to get there. When you think about the recycling systems, for example, the bathroom on board the International Space Station right now, we actually collect the urine and we recycle that and turn it into drinking water. That is one of those systems that's going to have to go with us on the way to Mars, because there's just no way we can take enough water with us because of the mass associated with that. So there's a lot of those kind of technology, life support technologies that we're going to have to continue to improve on and develop in order for us to get there. And then, of course, the launch or the landing vehicle on Mars is not an easy challenge. But the good news is there are a lot of very smart people out there, a lot of people, PhDs, engineers, that are working those kind of issues, and hopefully, hopefully by the time 2030, I think that's kind of the goal right now when we get there. So a lot of work to be done to make it happen.
Well, we appreciate your time so much today. This was wonderful, and we're very excited to have an astronaut from Missouri that was on the space station so recently. And thank you for spending time with us today.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure. I certainly enjoy sharing the experience. It's something very unique, something very special, as you can imagine. And so it's great to share with people. Hopefully, as we go forward here in the near future, we're going to have some new vehicles, commercial vehicles that are going to be able to launch astronauts from U.S. soil again. And so hopefully that's going to open the doors to even more people being able to get up in space and share that experience. So thank you very much. It's great to talk to people from Missouri. I don't get back as often as I would like to, but thanks for giving me a little sense of home.